And since 2015, we've served a lot of ministries, worked for the European Commission. We did even projects in Kenya where we did FutureScenarios. Before I started as a technology consultant in the year 2004, I already had a whole career in the creative sector, in the cultural sector. And that is because I started when I was 4 years old. I stepped on a stage to perform at the age of 4. The advice would be, at no point in time are we powerless to the future. We can actually co-create it. When talking about future technologies, many people feel powerless. We talked about the creatives who are afraid to be fired, and I understand that people can feel powerless. I think every one of us sometimes feels powerless. But I think it's good to remember that in no point in time are we actually powerless to the future. We can do things, we can co-create it. It's never a lost case.
According to the World Economic Forum, 97 million jobs will be created by artificial intelligence across 26 different countries by the year 2025. The question is, how many of these will be for creatives? Our guest today joins us to discuss the implications of one of the most disruptive emerging technologies of our time, generative AI. Ms. Ursula Eysin is the founder and CEO of Red Swan, a Vienna-based consultancy focused on developing future scenarios. Don't worry, we'll get into what that means a bit later. Today, Ursula is a passionate technology consultant and future scenario developer. But prior to all of this, she has held various roles in musical theater, opera, film, and television. Ursula, it's a pleasure having you here today. How are you?
Oh, thank you so much for having me on, Newton. I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing great myself. Let's get right into it then.
Let's do it.
I know what you do, roughly. Somewhat, it's not really clear for me either. But maybe for the audience, do you mind just telling us what exactly it is you do within the tech space?
Our flagship is the development of FutureScenarios. And since many years, actually since 2011, we help, for example, the Ministry of Technology in Austria, other federal ministries, but also big industry incumbents to develop future scenarios, very often with a focus on technology, but not always. But that also means that we look at future scenarios a little bit earlier, or at future technologies a little bit earlier than others do. For example, I'm also an evaluator with the European Commission, and I've evaluated more than 400 projects in the area of artificial intelligence and robotics since 2016. And I'm actually very excited about the generative AI now, because since 2016 and in all these 400 projects, I did not really see convincing business model for AI. And then came along generative AI. And now we have all these creative tools, and we not only consult people in how they can use it, we actually use it ourselves. I also come from the communication and creative sector, as you already mentioned. So we actually now are very excited about the developments. We use it a lot to develop pictures, to develop little movies, but it's all developing very fast now, and it's all a lot of try and error. It's actually now it's more like a slot machine. We have a lot of random experiences with the whole technology.
Yeah, quite a lot to unpack there, Ursula. So just to understand, you are tuning in from Vienna, Austria, right? Is that correct? And that's where the company is based. Okay. And your company sometimes or has worked with the Australian government in the past, and also
the Austrian government on a continuous basis. Yes.
Even now, at this very moment.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And you have also worked with, was it the European Commission you mentioned? Or you still work with them with regards to artificial intelligence?
Occasionally.
Occasionally. Okay. And your company, you mentioned 2016, so it has been running for that long, right? For quite some time. Over a
Since
decade.
2015. 2015.
15. Okay.
So
Okay.
it will
Okay.
be it will be a decade next year.
Okay, that makes sense. Just to help our understanding, I will start really small. What is this concept, future scenarios?
Oh, my pleasure to
We,
explain it. It's a
yes,
it's actually it's actually a very effective brain trick. It was invented by the US Air Force in the 1940s for strategic planning and famously adopted for business purposes in the 1960s and 70s by the oil company Royal Dutch Shell. And I had the great opportunity to learn it directly from Shell, from the former chief strategist of Shell, who happens to be an Austrian. He served as the chief strategist of Shell internationally for 25 years. And in the year 2010, he came back to Austria. We met in a business context, and he taught me this wonderful methodology, which is not only analytical but also very, very creative, because it's not like projecting yesterday's data into the future. It's really thinking of really different, usually 4 really different scenarios in completely different directions. And of course, you need a lot of creativity for that and a lot of human imagination. Also, coming back to AI, many people ask me, oh, are you using AI to develop these future scenarios? And say, no. We use it for pictures, we use it for very beautiful creativity, but not for these future scenarios, because it always hallucinated, and we also have to think AI has a bias. So it always wants to project something into it, which we do not want, because we want human creativity here. We want to think the unthinkable, and actually AI cannot do that, maybe yet, for us. But we do not use it in this area. But when we look at the future scenarios, we always look at a lot of driving forces. It can be psychological driving forces, if I do that on a one-on-one for one person, or external driving forces like economic development, political development, sociological development, but of course also technological development. And there we come back to the technology. And of course, we've seen the development of AI in many of our future scenarios, many years. But as I mentioned before, I was never really convinced of the business models. And why am I stressing that so much? If you want to democratize AI, the best thing is to show people how they can make money with it. It will democratize itself if you do that. So this is my
people are already
current
discovering
mission.
that on their own. Sorry. Yeah.
That's right. But also, I teach that at schools in Vienna right now. We started the first curriculum for teachers, the first AI curriculum for teachers in Austria with the Vienna Business School. And we do also a lot of workshops with students. And together we develop business models around this creative AI.
Well, your company Red Swan has its tentacles everywhere, it seems. In education, and quite a lot of things to unpack there.
That's right.
This originated from the military. This is sounding like, so I'm just really, the concept of this future scenario piqued my interest. It sounds like something of tactical warfare. It has its origins there, and now I understand that it's been used for not just technology, but you could also use this for other people, their personal lives.
Right.
It could be used in the psychological sense of the concept. But did you also say it's not used to predict the future? Or because that I actually thought before I asked that question, just from the name Future Scenarios, I was thinking it's all about just being a prophet.
Yeah. It's much more about creating the future than about predicting the future.
Okay, but just to interject there. So first of all, there is this element of predicting the future. So let's say I need Red Swan to help me with my business. You would come in and you'd probably pull together my entire team, and we have a discussion, and then we kind of make projections on how the future would look. Then we try to do something about it. I'm just trying to understand, is there any element of this where historic data is being used to determine what's to come in the future?
Also, of course, if I go in with a company, of course, we also look at the trends, which is based on yesterday's data. But that's not enough for us. So it's not like usual future projections, like trend analysis, because this only works with yesterday's data. And you cannot really create the future based on yesterday's data, at least not a future that will be different. So this is why then we step out of that. We use it. Of course, it's very useful. I will not disrespect that. It's very useful. But it's more creative, and as I said, it's mainly based on driving forces. So we would ask questions about the future, like if you could look 10 years into the future of your business, what would you like to know? If the future unfolded according to your wishes, what would you wish for? But if the future went in the wrong directions, what would you be worried about? Or what would you be afraid that would happen? And with this, we actually find out a lot of different drivers, the things that drive your business. And then we do it's called an impact uncertainty map. We analyze that to really find out which of these driving forces are actually critical uncertainties of the future. And people hate uncertainties usually, but we work with uncertainties because for the entrepreneur, that's actually the space where you can create things. If you have the certain trends on the other side, of course you can use that. If you know this or that will happen politically, technologically, yes, of course, we put this into account, but the real creative area is in the uncertainties. And usually entrepreneurs always jump on the uncertainties and find new solutions for that. So this is why we love uncertainties. And even there usually also, of course, are bad scenarios, and that's also psychologically very valuable, because our mind, if I present someone a best case scenario, it can be a group of very intelligent people. We had Nobel laureates in there. No one can tell you how to get to the best case scenario if you only present them the best case. But show them the worst case, and immediately the mind will get so creative. They will jump on it. They will find solutions. So in the end of these of the scenario process, not to skip the steps. When we have the uncertainties, we take two of these uncertainties, and it is as main dimensions for our scenarios. I give you an example. For example,
yes, please, because it's really it's not that easy to. I understand. Yes. I would say my understanding has improved by 50%, but it's still getting there. Yeah, an example would help if you don't mind.
So, for example, for a long time I had a lot of bad business partners. So I was like, okay, let's sit down, let's create future scenarios for my business partners. What do I really want in a business partner? And my two main driving forces or critical uncertainties were trust. Is it there or is it not there? And the other aches, like you really have, you put it like this, was potential. Is the potential there or is there no potential? And with this matrix, it became actually very easy to decide something. I had a case that asked me, will you join our business network? And first I trusted them a lot. So it was like, okay, trust is up. And potential, I saw some potential. So, okay, maybe this is an ideal business partner in my case. Then I had another talk with them and the trust went down. So now it was in the area this I call temptation. The temptation is you already have a bad feeling because the trust is gone, but you still see some potential. And I think a lot of business owners struggle with these cases. So you still think, oh, maybe it's still potential. Maybe they could bring me some business, maybe something. And then actually I had another talk with them based on this thinking already. And then I thought, oh my God, they just told me that there's no potential for us. So really they landed in the losing side, and then it was completely clear for me, and it really tortured me, like how should I decide? Will I miss this opportunity if I decide against it? But then it was completely clear, I don't trust them and there's no potential. So it was clear. I wrote to them, I'm very sorry, but I decided not to join your business network, and that's it. And then I felt very good about it. So this is how these scenarios work, is actually, yes, you imagine the future. And when I do this with groups and with people individually, we actually put ourselves in each scenario and I interview them from the future. It's like, imagine this world. Just imagine I jump into the temptation. 10 years from now, was this a good decision? What happened? How did you get here? Are you happy now? And then, of course, you can see easily where it would go. It's like, okay, there was no trust, they betrayed your trust, and eventually the potential was also not there. You were disappointed. So this is a very, very efficient psychological process, because people can become very, very clear what their decisions would mean in the future, and then they can feel really, really good about their decisions.
No, that puts things into perspective quite nicely. And thanks for that explanation. You take into account the driving forces behind your clients or their motives, the business objectives. Exactly. So now I think that helps a lot with my understanding. You also consider what it is they are trying to achieve, so that is being accounted for in weighing their possibilities of achieving that, and also just making sure they have good strategies in place to mitigate any ramifications that might come out of a negative outcome. Okay, that
so
helps.
In the end, and after we really got the look and feel of the different scenarios, we usually make a list of the unwanted and the wanted, because then, according to the scenarios, now I know what I do not want. And I decided I do not want business partners I cannot trust and have no potential, for example. So now you can think of, what do I want instead? And from that, I actually redefined my perfect customer. And this was really a process that lasted also for, sometimes in your business, you go back and say, okay, who is really, really my ideal customer? And the real beautiful thing was, once you become clear, usually you get to these customers. And I had this really beautiful experience that these customers actually showed up then. But you have to be clear about that first. You have to define it. And when I defined it, for me, it's my ideal customers are bold business leaders who are brave enough to change the world by starting with themselves. And when I formulated it this way, I actually was not sure if I will ever find anyone like that. So, but I knew this is it, right? I know what I don't want. I know what I want instead. And I really found these customers one by one. And you have really nice experiences. Of course, you don't know when exactly. And don't be disappointed if they do not show
uncertain.
Up. Yes, exactly. Thank you. Yeah. It's still uncertain, but I had beautiful experiences with that.
Yeah. No, it's a really fascinating field of work.
It is.
I must admit, I wasn't familiar with this. And I tend to approach things with just a mind of a 5-year-old, asking the really elementary questions. And that's how I really get to the crux of how something works. And everything else could be added on top of that. Well, now I think I would leave this call with a good understanding. The only thing I would be unable to answer, and you don't have to answer it if you do not have an answer for it, is if I were to act as a future scenario developer after this call, I don't think I could ever have a cap on the number of scenarios I could come up with. It could be infinity, right? We're talking about uncertainties. So this might be endless scenarios and predictions. I think it was the ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus, right, who said, change is the only constant, right? So things would always continue to change and change. So if I have a client, for example, and I have to come back with a list of some analysis I have performed it wouldn't be a list that has an ending. But just thought off the top of my head. What do
Yes,
you
and
think
that's
about that?
why I like the scenario process so much, because you force yourself to come up with 4 scenarios. That's why you
For
choose 2 dimensions, as I mentioned before, like I had the trust and the potential. And then you force yourself. First, you have 4 scenarios, but you integrate the different driving forces in each of these scenarios. You then contemplate how will these different driving forces develop in each of these scenarios, so you don't lose any influences. But it's a very good task, and very often when I work with a lot of technologists, for example AI experts, physicists, etc., they always try to argue that we need more dimensions. They always, as you just said, no, we need another dimension. Don't worry, we have the other dimensions, but it's a very good exercise to force yourself to be very clear what is really the most
the
important, the
priority,
2 most.
exactly, should be
Yes,
prioritized.
and
Makes
that's
sense.
why this works so well, because I love that you mentioned that. That's usually the problem. For example, I had also an Austrian bank calling me, and they said we had a strategy meeting, and now we have so many driving forces, we have 60 slides, we don't know what to do with that now. And I said, I can help you, because first we analyze it, we see the impact and the uncertainty, and then we go on to clarify that. And this is what I love so much about it. Not only that it's so creative, but that you also have to force yourself to be very clear.
Yeah, especially when you're juggling uncertainties. That makes sense. Thanks so much, Ursula. Just for our audience, who I'm sure might be curious, if we may take a look at the person behind this illustrious career, could you tell us a bit about your career? Maybe starting from the early beginnings, just a light walkthrough would be helpful to understand, how that looked like, all the way to your current position as the head of Red Swan.
Mhm. Yeah, so you already mentioned that before I started as a technology consultant in the year 2004, I already had a whole career in the creative sector, in the cultural sector, and that is because I started with when I was 4 years old. I stepped on a stage to perform at the age of 4, and performed my whole youth. And then also subsequently, I studied sinology, which is Chinese. I was a translator for Mandarin Chinese, in combination with theater, film, and media sciences, and worked in the cultural sector, in opera, in film and musical productions, and also as a TV presenter for the Chinese television. And I enjoyed the cultural sector. I grew up in the cultural sector, but I saw that this actually, I thought that the people who do that, I usually say the backstage is much less beautiful than the front stage. Everyone who has ever been
Agree.
on a stage knows that. And that's also a metaphor for the whole business. It's not so beautiful. I felt that they destroyed something that I love so much, the whole music, the beauty, the performance. And there's also a lot of mismanagement, let's call it that. So I stepped out of that. Really, I had enough, and really took 180 turn, and said, okay, I know Chinese, maybe this could be interesting for technology companies and for technology consultant or something. And I wrote to a company in Austria. They are called European Technology Management, and they actually were looking for someone. And I said, I have no clue about technology, but I'm totally committed. I want to change from the cultural sector. I want to go into technology consulting. And I know Chinese, maybe you have some projects with China. And and actually, that's really what happened. They had a project for the European Commission, and it was between the European Commission and China. It was a remapping of cooperations between Europe and China in the sector of information and communication technologies. So I got in. And this was how I started it. Parallel to that, I did a master in public relations because communication was always my passion. So then from this, I got hired by Austria's most influential and prestigious public relations and lobbying agency, and worked for them in the tech sector because there are not so many communication consultants who can do the tech sector. And then I had clients like Microsoft, T-Mobile, Nokia, Siemens Networks, all the big ones. Everyone who's in Austria actually was my client, and also politics, various ministries. So I had a deep dive into the whole technology and communication sector, and have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of all of this. So after that, actually, I founded a first consulting company with one of my colleagues. It was in the sector of cybersecurity. That was in 2010. And in 2015, I started my own company, Red Swan, with the focus on the development of FutureScenarios, which I had learned from the former chief strategist of Shell by then. And since 2015, we've served a lot of ministries. We worked for the European Commission. We did even projects in Kenya, where we did FutureScenarios for devolution in Kenya. It was published as a book then. And have a lot of technology projects with a creative touch, I would say. Really, we get many people internationally contact us to do strategic workshops, but in a very creative way. And that's probably the unique selling proposition that I have.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be something very much in need, especially now in the tech industry. Approach to projects in creative and entertaining ways to get people engaged. Otherwise, people, especially those from the tech industry, they're kind of fed up at this point with attending one seminar after another or talk workshop after another.
Oh yeah, we just on Tuesday there was the biggest conference for digital technologies in Austria. It's called the Imagine. And I had a group of students, like 17-year-old students, and in the last month, I helped them to create beautiful pictures in Leonardo AI. The topic was the melting of virtual and of the virtual world and reality. And the question was, how do you imagine that? So first, they created the pictures in Leonardo AI.
Oh, they were asking the right person there. How do you create that?
Yeah. Exactly.
You were the perfect person to answer that. Yeah.
Yes, but I let the students actually answer that, and it turned out really beautiful, because I just said, okay, you can use these tools, and I created beautiful pictures. We actually took the most beautiful pictures. There were 4 students, and each of them then had it printed out on canvas, pretty big. And then on stage, we wanted to merge the virtual world with reality. And they had pink paint, and each of their words had a motto. Like one was inspiration, the next was wonder and happiness and togetherness. And they wrote these words with paint on stage on their pictures. And while they were doing it, we showed videos. This was also something they created from all the pictures they created in Leonardo AI. We took it to Canva, and they made stop motion videos, which means you have hundreds of pictures, and each of them is less than a second, and it's very fast. And also they created music with suno.com, and it was just beautiful. And I interviewed them, like, why is your world called wonder? What is it? And actually the student who had this wonder topic, which was an Alice in Wonderland topic, it was really beautiful. She told us a lot of people think or wait for technology to bring them a wonder, but they don't get that they are the wonder themselves. And this was just amazing. I mean, that's philosophical. Would you expect that from a 17-year-old? And it was the highlight of the conference. It was really the highlight of the conference. Everyone just said it was so inspiring. It was so refreshing to have something like that. And that's actually what we do. That's what we do. We try new technologies, but we always try to merge it with the real world and with creativity.
Interesting. Seems generative AI is just taking over everywhere you look. You could see the effects. I was curious just to get your perspective on the tech space now, especially with generative AI in the picture. From your point of view, what are these implications of generative AI for today's tech community? I wouldn't want to ask how would the future look, but I'm sure that would be a perfect question for you. But feel free to give your projections as well about generative AI and what's to come.
I think we have to differentiate on the use cases. And this is very important. I work with AI technologies since many, many years, and they actually do not think about use cases. Sometimes they are really annoyed if someone asks them for use cases, and we are all about use cases. And I think for me at the moment, the most practical and most promising use case is actually really in the creative sector with image generation, video generation. I'm not totally convinced of the text generation as someone who also writes professionally for media, etc. I'm never really happy with what ChatGPT gives me there, for example.
Why?
ChatGPT. Because it seems to be trained on if you are, of course you can find good prompts, but it is ChatGPT is not a really good writer at the moment. It gets better every week, but it's not a perfect writer. If you're a professional writer, it is not really. And I think we have this phenomenon a lot. If you ask ChatGPT something you are not a professional in or not an expert in, you get quite impressed. You think, oh, that makes sense, but actually it gives you
agree with you on that.
Yes, it gives you only a very basic answer. And if you are the professional, yes, you can use it as a starting point. I think this is very useful. Even if you make a business plan for one of your clients or for yourself, you can use it as the basis, but you must be aware that there's no creativity or there are no uncertainties. It works with the things that are already there. Yeah. So it's not so promising for that. So for the whole
completely on board with
strategy,
you. Yeah.
yes.
And I have a lot of examples on issues using ChatGPT, but this call would never end if I were to speak about them. So just go ahead.
You want to give one example?
The worrying thing about ChatGPT is that sometimes it actually gives you detailed answers about questions. Like it's actually detailed answers with dates. So there was a time I queried it for, don't want to make this about the war, but the war in Israel and Palestine. And it claimed that there was an ongoing ceasefire. And it gave me the exact date and time that ceasefire came into action, which was all fabricated.
It was fabricated.
It was all wrong and misleading. So the hallucinations with not just ChatGPT, with most of the chatbots online, completely messing up the internet. It's an entire discussion that we could have for probably another episode.
That's right. And I would caution people to use it for research. You can, but as you said, it will generate something. And that's the very meaning of generative AI. It takes data and it creates synthetic data. It
generates lies as well.
Yes. And it lies. Well, it would say it generates.
It generates lies. A creative liar, Yeah.
Exactly. And you have to be aware. Also, when we did the AI basic curriculum for teachers, I asked them first, for what do you use generative AI for right now? And many said for research. And I said, I would caution you to do that. I think that's actually not the right direction to use it for. It has a bias and generates it. As you said, it lies. I had recently I talked to a father, and he told me that they had generated homework for his daughter because it was late and something. He said, okay, let's use ChatGPT. And he said, actually, ChatGPT invented a country that didn't even exist in the Roman Empire. So yeah, be aware. It's generative, it creates, and also for example, for research papers, you will need sources. And it doesn't give you sources. Even if you ask it, it can give you sources, but it invents sources. It really invents sources. I had an example of a friend of mine who told me that she tried to write a research paper and she asked ChatGPT for sources, and ChatGPT gave her a source and accredited it to her husband, who is a professor at the Economic University in Vienna, but he didn't write this paper. So she
This is
knew
dangerous,
exactly.
This is
Yes,
dangerous.
it is. That's exactly right. And this is why I like the image generation so much, especially to use it in creative ways. You can use it for marketing. I'm not talking about the whole deep fake thing, of course, I'm not interested in that. But for creatives, actually, I would jump on board because it's really amazing. But of course, also I talk to a lot of creatives, and we try it as well a lot. It's more like a slot machine. We experiment a lot, and it's more like a creative toddler. It doesn't necessarily do what you want it to do. So I would not say fire all your creatives. You would also not replace them by your creative toddler, would you? Because it's just not reliable. And if you have a client who needs something very specific, the AI just doesn't do it very often. You say, please add this, and it doesn't do it. So this still doesn't work, but the whole sector at the moment is really crazy. We see really developments every week. I have like presentations for that, for business owners, for all kinds of target groups, all kinds of people. I have to add things every day. Every day there's something new coming out. We try something new, especially in the video creation, for example. There was this big announcement of Sora months ago. We are still not able to test it. Then there came others. There was Korea, AI, Pika, etc. We tested them all, and all were not good. That was not good. It was not very satisfying to do that. And then came Luma Labs Dream Machine, and you can really create amazing videos with that. But of course, we cannot like create a whole 3 hours movie or blockbuster with that. We can create 5 seconds at a time. So of course it's still slow, but it's of course you see some results and you think it's amazing, but still it's more like a slot machine. And also there's a recent trend for all these, like Sora still lets us wait. Another provider for this video technology is Runway. They now announced that Runway 3 will be able to do the same things as Luma's Dream Machine, and they let us wait again. So creators are also getting a bit annoyed because this also seems to be a model or a playbook they all play. And also when we talk about how will this develop in the future, what I do not hope for but could happen is that these tools will be so expensive that again only few people will be able to use it. So at the moment we may test it all, and all creatives deliver data. We deliver training data when we test it a lot, but it could be that like companies like OpenAI with Sora decide they only give it to Hollywood studios, and then we have not democratized AI. So at the moment this is the big question. How expensive will that be in the future? Now they want us all to use it. They want all our input. They want our ideas.
Exactly.
They want, and I think this would be a
We are
very
helping
bad
them build it.
development.
We're helping them
Exactly.
fine-tune their weapon, which, as you said, it's already been monopolized and sold to the highest bidder at the moment, which is sad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. No. That was an interesting perspective on the state of things, and you touched on very, very important points there. Those 5 seconds videos you mentioned, just thinking about the amount of energy that was burnt to create that, It's just wild,
Mm.
completely wild. So we're not sure at this moment how sustainable this technology is. It would end up just being a tool for the elite to use. I think not too long ago there was this movie that was to come out. It was being directed by, if I recall correctly, was that Tyler Perry. He had already had everything all planned out, the movie set, the script, everything was all set to go. But I think just before shooting began, that was it when Sora came out and began to make headlines, and then he
Mm.
just paused everything that was going, paused the entire
Really?
crew. Yeah, I don't know if that has been resumed. The last time I checked on this was a
Mhm.
couple of weeks back, but he paused absolutely everything, and no one was working. Obviously, if an
Oh.
artificial intelligence can create a 2-hour movie and you don't have to hire 50 people, get an entire
Mm. Mm.
camera, audio crew, they would do this.
That's
It's
the thing.
it's a
That's the thing. When you get so good results with that. Like for the Luma Labs, this is really the dream machine. It's really a dream machine. What we discovered is you need something with some perspective. So it has to be a room with some depth. Otherwise, it does not really work so well. But with that, they have the zooming, the panning, the tilting. You would need a really good cameraman and a lot of equipment to do the same thing. And also the sounds like Suno. I think the music industry already tries to sue Suno.com. But it's amazing. It's amazing. You can create so many songs, and I think it could be a good thing to democratize it. But if they first take all our input and then make it so expensive that we cannot use it, would really be the worst development of the whole thing. But you're
Yeah,
completely right. Of course, why would I pay like hundreds of millions of dollars for a movie when I can create it step by step in five
from the
seconds at a
comfort of your
time?
own room, you just write the script,
Yes,
hit the button, and AI creates it for you. You don't even have to leave the house to create
yes,
an A-list movie.
yeah, yes. But
Uh,
still, of course, you still have to have this. I do not think that creatives will be out of work, actually. I think
I
they
really
now
want to
have.
expound on that. I really want to
Yes.
expound on why you have this strong opinion that
Mm.
creatives, unfortunately, Ursula, they are getting fired. Let's call a spade a spade.
Yes,
Regardless
I've heard that too.
of what,
Yes.
yeah,
Mm,
creatives are
mm,
losing their jobs in large numbers, in droves, right?
mm.
uh, this Tyler Perry case is just one example. There are many others. They're usually the first to be threatened by artificial intelligence. So
Hmm.
you mentioned this a couple of times so far, saying, hey, do not fire your creatives. You're going to need them because you cannot
Yes.
rely on the work artificial intelligence is doing. But what do you say about those people who would claim, well, you don't need 1,000 creatives, you just need one to supervise the work being done by artificial intelligence? That would end up leaving 99% of creatives without employment. So should they be worried? Should we really be sounding the clarion call for creatives at this point to really go
I
upskilling something else?
at the moment we definitely need the humans to direct the AI, and it's also a lot of work. At the moment, for example, you cannot, as you mentioned, if you really only do like text to image, this will not really work. You have to have your own aesthetic, so you go to one program and create beautiful images. Then next you go to the next program and actually you have to know which program to use for what. Some are more controllable than others, etc. So I think we are in this business now, and there are many people in this business now to actually test everything, to experiment. And I would suggest that to creatives too. Do that. You have the basic knowledge, you know things about lighting, you know things about angles, and you need to know that at the moment. Of course, you can say, okay, I can always imitate another style. Yes, but still, in the end, that you have something unique. I see so many things every day, so many pictures. It always becomes unique. You can recognize the artist. It's not that it's just. Of course, there are these people who do just generative in the beginning, very just generative, and everything was the same. I was a bit worried that everything becomes boring and the same, but these people are not there anymore. It's like a month ago they were there, and I think they got bored of it themselves. So they had no ingenuity. But if you have that, it's always your own style. And also, what do you, the curation of content, the curation of the pictures. That's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to choose the pictures from hundreds of pictures, then to tweak the prompt, to enhance it, to put, and also to change it. Very often you have to change it. You still need someone who knows Photoshop because it's not perfect in the end. So you will still need them. But I must say, the whole concept of Hollywood, if I would work in Hollywood, I would be concerned as well, because I think that's probably always was overpriced. Working in the industry myself, I think, how can it be that there is such a big difference between a Hollywood actor and someone who acts in a province theater? It's the same thing, isn't it? Can someone be that much better as an actor? Of course they can be better, but that much? Hundreds of millions of dollars better? I would actually doubt that, coming back to business models. So I think it really, in the cases of Hollywood and the Hollywood creators, I would be concerned too. I'm not sure if they can get the money they earn now in the future. On the other hand, to avoid that everything becomes the same and generative, what we also do, we regularly put in new pictures, real pictures we made into the AI, and immediately you change the style and something new comes in. So I don't think that this will stop altogether. We need it. If you come to an end with a prompt and you think, okay, that's boring now, put in a real picture and it changes the whole style and you have something new again. So we will need that. Also, there's this phenomenon that AI is already running out of training data. So creatives, if you want to, and of course they should get paid for that, but put in new training data. Of course, not for free. This I would also say. But I heard that OpenAI is paying something like $100 per gigabyte or something at the moment for training data. So photographers, if you like.
I'm not surprised. The countless copyright infringement lawsuits that you've had from companies complaining their data has been stolen to train these large language models we use today. So yes, it would only get worse in the future. There would be fewer companies willing to share data to train these artificial intelligence models. So yeah, that's on one side. Also, it's not just all bleak, the future for creatives today. Funny enough, I think Japan is leading the fight against the extermination of our creatives as we know them today.
Really? What are they doing in Japan?
Yeah, I say Japan because Japan is currently managing 90% of the digital camera space. So I'm talking about Canon, Nikon, you name it, Sony, right? Those cameras. And these companies are working at the moment to include some form of digital signatures in pictures and videos created by actual human beings, right? So that this can always be distinguished from whatever has been created by artificial intelligence wherever you find this media online, which I feel it's very, very important and very much in need, especially now. This is a ray of hope for creatives because, because if I'm a painter, right, we still want to have painters. We still want someone who's actually skilled in using their hands, using aerosol cans to spray things on walls. We still need that level of skill.
That's why we merge that. That's why then we print the AI pictures out and enhance it with colors. That's why we combine the artificial world with the real world and with real colors and real paint, etc. And also, you cannot protect your IPR on an AI image. You can use it, but everyone else who finds it on Leonardo AI can also use it. And how can you protect it? If you change it in a significant way. So that's why we started printing it out, painting it in a different way, or just letting color pour all over it or something like that and make a performance out of that, then you change it in a significant way and it's your unique artwork. And you also do not need to enhance human beings. This I don't like at all about the whole artificial intelligence
Yeah,
discussion. You don't need
I'm with you on
chips in
that.
your
You don't need to
brain to
enhance the
become a better
human
human.
body. Yeah,
Yes. I think we're still not using all of our brain, for example. I think it's actually a very small part we use. So why should we put any chips in our brain and let some AI help us? I think the human body is made beautifully and it works really, really well. Just compare it to robots. They are very sensitive. A robot looks good in the lab, actually. But so I'm not I'm not convinced of this specific thing about AI, the whole general AI discussion. I talk a lot to AI experts, and most of them actually say that's not our goal. We want actually to solve particular problems. We are not interested in creating new human beings.
you're about to take Neuralink out of business
I'm not
because
convinced of the
I
whole Neuralink.
yeah, I think there might be some situations where their mission might be useful nonetheless.
Sure,
For example, where we're dealing with handicapped individuals, maybe amputees, right, who can
of
only
course,
use
yes.
their brain. Yeah,
Mm,
so in those
mm,
cases, yeah, it's good and fine. You can implant a chip in their brain. I was actually watching this dude, I've forgotten his name, but I think he was patient. I wouldn't call him patient zero. I would call him the first
mm.
test Neuralink tried out on a human since it was approved by the US government. It was a successful test. They implanted the chip in his brain, and he was able to play video games and perform some
Hmm.
menial activities just by thinking about them. So he has no hands or legs. In cases like that, I think it's completely justified, and it's
Absolutely,
completely
yes.
important to have companies like Neuralink
But it's a
trailblazing
very
in that
small
regard.
it's a it's a very small percentage. I
Oh,
would not go from these extreme cases to say everyone needs that. And everyone I'm talking to, every AI expert I know says I will not volunteer for that. If anyone wants, okay. If it's not a question of life or death, or if you can do anything at all, of course, if you are in an extreme health situation, extreme measures can be a good thing to apply and to try. But if your body is perfectly healthy, why should you jeopardize it?
completely agree. If there was a most valuable piece of advice you could offer to someone looking to get to where you are today in your career, what would that advice be?
Yes. The advice would be, at no point in time are we powerless to the future. We can actually co-create it. It's not that you alone create your future. I think that's also would be a narcissistic bubble to say that, but you can co-create the future with other human beings. When talking about future technologies, many people feel powerless. We talked about the creatives who are afraid to be fired, and I understand that people can feel powerless. I think every one of us sometimes feels powerless, but I think it's good to remember that in no point in time are we actually powerless to the future. We can do things, we can co-create it. It's never a lost case.
A useful piece of advice, especially in this day and age. Just if you were to start out your career today in 2024,
Mm.
is there something you would do differently?
That's a very good question. I once had a friend of mine say, should I ever found a business, I would do it exactly like you. And I said, oh my God, I don't even know if I would do it like me. Um, but it works. um, would I do something differently? I think, as we say, many roads go to Rome. So this is also, as I work with a lot of very young students, between 15 and 20 years old. What I tell them is you don't have to be so tense about your career choice. Because look at my career, it's very, very colorful. I did a lot of things and I bring it all together in my company and it creates something very unique. Could you plan that out? Probably not. And do changes like my 180-degree pivot from culture to technology. Is that a catastrophe? No, it's good. You bring something very specific and very new to another field, and this is very valuable. So when I discuss future scenarios with 18-year-olds who just graduated, they are very nervous. They think now they can make so many mistakes. And I usually tell them, don't be so tense about it. You're so young. You can try everything now. Just let's find out what are your basic drivers, what are your motivations, what thing would you like to see changed in the world, and what are your skills to do that, to bring that about. But everything else, the how, is not so important. You cannot plan that out. You can imagine different future scenarios and to become clear about your motivation and your core values. This is very important also. I think this is maybe something that's a strength. That's also a strength of the future scenario methodology. You really dive down to your core values. And when you have your core principles, it doesn't matter what happens. No matter what the future holds, you will prevail and be hopefully successful. And if not, you can change. You really can. You really can. So you can reinvent yourself. You can reinvent your business. Just do it with other human beings and try to form some connections to do so. But I think then you will be successful.
Completely agree. It's very important to stay flexible in this dynamic career. That's how the tech industry is. And also skills are transferable, right?
Yes.
You could pivot easily from cultural space into something strictly technical. So yeah, thank you so much, Ursula, first of all, for coming on the podcast and for sharing your versatile portfolio and wealth of experience that you've gathered so far. Where can anyone find you who's looking online?
I think the best thing is to go to www.redswan.at. You can also find me on LinkedIn. That's my strongest channel under my name, Ursula Eysin. And I have a podcast myself on Substack. It's called Code Red by Red Swan.substack.com. I'm happy to see you there.
Thank you, Ursula, for hanging in here till the very end. It has been a very refreshing session with you.
It was my pleasure. Let me thank you. It was my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yeah, hopefully we're going to have you here back sometime in the near future to share your developments and your career path. On that note, we bring this episode to an end. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, follow, and all that good stuff. Until the next episode, cheers.